Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is the Dominaria set review for green. So I've kind of got my greenish shirt. It doesn't really look that green on camera, but it is green. I think it is green enough for this green set review here. Let's get into it, guys, and talk about Adventurous Impulse, the first green card up here. A 1 sorcery or 1 green mana sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is a common for us, so we're going to see this quite a lot in Draft and Sealed. So I think this is probably okay for some mana filtering as well as creature filtering. Actually, for 1 mana, it's not too bad in Draft and Sealed. For Standard, probably not going to get used that much. Really not that great as far as utility here. But I think for Draft and Sealed, if this is like a last, like second to last, like 13th or 14th pick, then this is going to be a good card for that. Moving on here, we have Ancient Animus. This is a 2 mana instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control if it's a legendary. Then it fights target creature an opponent controls. Since there will always be a legendary creature per pack in the actual Draft and Sealed pool here, or just in the booster packs in general, we're hopefully will be getting a nice legendary creature to use this on. This is basically a really decent Savage Stomp, but for any creature that's legendary on our side of the field. I like this card a lot. I do think it will be quite good if we have, again, legendary creatures in our deck here. And since we have, a lot of legendary creatures in the actual format right now in Draft and Sealed for Dominaria, this card is going to come in handy. Standard, not going to get played. Moving up here, we have Armament. This is a 1 green mana instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains reach until end of turn. This is really interesting because I really like this a lot. This is a +1/+1 counter, not just +1/+1 overall. So this is actually a combat trick that sticks, but it also does give temporary reach as well for those pesky flyers in the mid to late game for us. So I really like the Armament here. I think this is going to be a decent combat trick, especially for 1 green mana at instant speed in Draft and Sealed. Again, not even going to see any kind of play in Standard. Moving up here, we have Baloth Gorger, a 4 mana 4/4 beast. That alone is pretty good. Just for a common, you're going to see this quite a lot. With Kicker for 4 colorless, if Baloth Gorger was kicked, it enters a battle with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. So if you pay 8 mana, it turns into a 7/7. I wish this had Trample or some other type of evasion. This card would be ridiculous. It would also put that, in the uncommon range. But as a common here, a 4 mana 4/4 is amazing for us, and an 8 mana 7/7 is really good as well if we have the mana in the mid to late game. Love this card a lot. Again, won't see any kind of standard play, just too slow. Moving on here, we have Broken Bond, a 2 mana sorcery. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Doesn't even say tap, it just says onto the battlefield. I really like this card a lot. I wish this card was instant speed. It would be much better if it wasn't instant speed. But being at sorcery speed, it's still very good, giving us, removal on our opponent's side of the field, as well as giving us the ability to ramp a little bit for just 2 mana. This card is super good, and I think we'll see a lot of it in the Draft and Sealed pool for sure for ramping decks. For Standard, maybe I don't really see this card being like that good of a standard card. Maybe a sideboard card. It does have artifact and enchantment hate as well as ramp. It's very interesting. I do like it for that specific ability. So maybe some sideboard ramp for us as well. Moving up here, we have Corrosive Ooze. This art here is insane. A 2 mana 2/2 ooze, so a bear basically. Whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by an equipped creature, destroy all equipment attached to that creature at the end of combat. So this is a very specific ability. Doesn't even include auras, just says equipments. There's really not that many equipments in the actual Draft and Sealed pool, so this is basically just a 2/2 bear for us. So it's gonna be kind of a low pick for us in Draft and Sealed. Honestly, it's not gonna see any kind of standard play either. If there was more important or more impactful equipment spells in the actual format, this would be more useful to us. There is a equipment that has First Strike, so this could be useful against that particular equipment, but besides that, this card is just kind of an okay. Moving up here, we have Elfheim Druid. Love the art on this one. This is a 2 mana 0/2 elf. We can add 1 green to our mana pool, or add 2 green, spend this mana only to cast kick spells. So I like this a lot, especially if you get into a lot of kicked spells, just like that Baloth we talked about earlier. This is very good for that. It's also a very good early game blocker because it is a 0/2 toughness. That's pretty decent as well. And of course, it does mana ramp us overall, just tapping for green mana. So I do think the Druid here would be a nice inclusion into a green-red or maybe a green-black ramped deck in Draft and Sealed. So kind of a low to mid pick for me in Draft and Sealed. Moving up here, we have Fungal Plots. I love this card a lot. This is a 2 mana enchantment. We can pay 2, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token, sacrifice sacrifice 2 saplings, you gain 2 life and draw a card. I like this because it's an enchantment that can actually have like recurring abilities throughout the entire game, giving us a blocker, as well as giving us the ability to gain some life and draw cards, giving us card advantage. It does so much for 2 mana. This is a great uncommon. We're not going to see it as much in Draft and Sealed, but I do think this card is going to be a lot of value for you in the early game, especially in like the mid to late game when you have a lot of cards in your actual graveyard here. It is specific in saying a creature card from your graveyard, so it's very being, you know, your graveyard and just a creature card. So I think if you're in a very high creature curve in the Draft and Sealed environment, this card's going to be very useful to you. For standard, not going to get used at all. Moving on here, we have Gaia's Blessing. It's back. This is a 2-mana sorcery. Target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library, draw a card, and then when Gaia's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. This card is ridiculous. I love this card a ton, and this card is going to be really, really good in Draft and Sealed, especially because you're going to have 1 and 2 of cards in your entire deck lists. Of course, there are 40 cards in an entire deck, so if you have like a giant bomb die, use Gaia's Blessing, put it back into your deck, and you might redraw it throughout the course of the match. I like this card a lot, and it does draw a card for you as well, so this card is just all around fantastic for Draft and Sealed. Might even see some standard play as well in some deck lists too. Moving up here, we have Gaia's Protector, a 4-mana 4/2. Gaia's Protector must be blocked if able. Not really that big of a fan of this one. Honestly, it's really good at being able to get rid of bombs if they only have 1 bomb on their side of the field, being that it does have you know, 4 power here. The problem, of course, is that it only has 2 toughness, so it's going to be something that's going to die as soon as it attacks, which is not very good for us. So in Draft and Sealed, I would definitely try and stay away if I could. Moving up here, we have Gift of Growth. This is a great combat trick for us. A 2-mana instant with Kicker for 2. Untap that target creature. It gains +2/+2 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, the target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. I really like this a lot. Paying 2 mana, giving it +2/+2, and untapping it is a great combat trick. Paying 4 and untapping it with a +4/+4, that's even better. I think this card is definitely going to end some games for people. I wish it gave us Trample as well, but it does not. But it is a common, so you're going to see quite a bit of them. Moving on here, we have Grow from the Ashes. This card is actually deceptively amazing. A 3-mana sorcery with Kicker for 2. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. That doesn't even mean tapped, just onto the battlefield untapped. If this spell was kicked, instead search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So for 5 mana, we get 2 lands untapped coming into the battlefield. This card is ridiculous. It's almost better than Hour of Promise. It doesn't give you 2 2/2s, obviously, but I do think this is a great common for Draft and Sealed, being able to ramp you, as well as thin your deck 2 cards for sure. So for 5 mana, this is definitely worth it for that. And this might even see standard play based on how quickly it will ramp you in untapped lands as well. Moving up here, we have Groom the Lonely King. 6 mana 5/5, legendary creature, Ape Warrior. He has a Kicker for 3 colorless. If Groom the Lonely King was kicked, it enters a battlefield with 5 +1/+1 counters on it. Now keep in mind, this turns it from 6 to 9, so it better be worth it for 9. And whenever it attacks alone, double its power and toughness until end of turn. So this is a big giant dude, and if you have anything on it to give it trample, it's going to come in and actually like decimate your opponent. This card is massive. I love it a lot, and I can't wait to swing out against opponents with this giant bomb in my Draft and Sealed pool. For standard, it's kind of too big and slow and kind of dumb, of course, but I do think in Draft and Sealed this is going to be an all-star card for you. Moving on from here, we have Kamal's Druid Vow. This is a rare for us. X and 2 green, legendary sorcery. You may cast a legendary sorcery only if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. Look at the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of lands and or legendary permanent cards with a converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest into your graveyard. So this is sort of an interesting card. I think this might see better play in standard and not necessarily in Draft or Sealed. Maybe even then. I don't think it's going to be that great in standard. I think this is one of those cards where you might almost want to pass it, depending on how many legendary cards you actually have in your pool when you get into it in Draft and Sealed. So if this is like your first rare in Draft and Sealed, it might be okay to take. If it's your last rare, you might want to really consider what you have on your deck list and say, is this worth it for us that we can actually get this off? And of course, if it is, go ham. This card is ridiculous if you do get the legendary sorcery, you know, kind of casted here. Moving on here, though, we have Krosan Druid, a 3-mana 2/3. That alone is pretty decent, but it also has a Kicker for 5. When Krosan Druid enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, you gain 10 life. So this is actually a great card if you want to pay the 7 mana. Actually, it's the 8 mana. 8 mana here, 5 and 3, so 8 mana. It actually can, like, you know, somehow like come back from the dead sometimes if you have the mana to kind of dump into this in the mid to late game. I do think this card otherwise is just okay being a 2/3. Whoops, go back here. It's just okay being a 2/3. So I do think this card is probably just a mid to low pick for us in Draft and Sealed. But if you know that you have a lot of mana ramp in your deck and can get to 8 there, you might be able to get this off with a kicker and gain some extra life. That actually puts you super ahead here. Moving on here, we have Llanowar Elves. She's back, or it's back, or he's back, or they're back. This card is back. It's a 1 green mana, 1/1. You can tap it, add 1 green mana to your mana pool, and that's it. Or actually just add 1 green. There's no mana pool technically on the text anymore, but very, very good card. As patient and generous as life, as harsh and merciless as nature. Love the art on this one, and I can't wait to put this in a standard deck. Llanowar Elves is always going to be playable in Draft Sealed and even standard. A great 1/1 that can ramp you. Moving on here, we have Llanowar Envoy, a 3 mana 3/2. Pay 2 mana, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is interesting because it kind of can like help mana fix you if you're in a bind and you only have green mana on the mana field, or on the battlefield, not mana field, on the battlefield. Again, this is a 3 mana 3/2, so it can trade up, which is really nice as well, and get in for some extra damage. So I like that it's a 3 mana 3/2. That's pretty decent here, and being able to mana fix is nice as well. Just wish it was like, you know, 1 green instead of 2 colorless here, or 1 colorless and 1 green. That's a little expensive on my taste. I do think just having 1 green, add 1 mana would be nice as well. But again, that's fine. I think it's going to be decent in Draft and Sealed. Again, not going to see any kind of standard play. Moving up here, we have Llanowar Scout, a 2 mana 1/3 elf scout. You can pay, or tap it actually, and you can play a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So this is kind of amazing and might actually see standard play. So if you have a lot of lands in your hand in like turn 1 and you have the scout out, it's going to be a great way to hopefully ramp you into getting more and more land on the battlefield more quickly. And again, they come onto the battlefield and they don't even say tap. It just says onto the battlefield. That just means untap, which is amazing. Again, there is just so much ramp in the green here. It's kind of ridiculous. I cannot wait to play this in standard with some testing around, and I think that it's going to be really good as well in Draft and Sealed because it is a 2 mana 1/3 as well, so it's got a nice big butt to block some creatures. Next up, we have Mammoth Spider, a classic here. 5 mana 3/5 spider with reach. Very, very good. Good at blocking, you know, a lot of flyers that are in the format right now. A lot of the flyers only have 3 toughness too, so Mammoth Spider is a good, you know, combat or good angle to kind of counter the flyers in the actual format in Draft and Sealed. So if you're kind of wanting to get into a nice big bomb with a nice big butt, Mammoth Spider is your guy. Next up here, we have Marwyn the Nurturer, a 3 mana 1/1 legendary creature elf druid. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn the Nurturer. You can tap it, add any amount of green equal to the Marwyn's power. This is super interesting. I'm not so sure it's going to see any kind of like legitimate play in Draft and Sealed. It is a rare, of course. You're not going to see it that much, so I really wouldn't worry about that. But for standard, this card might see some real play. It will get larger, of course, and of course will ramp you too. So it's kind of interesting, but I just don't know if there are enough elves in the format right now, even with Dominaria's inclusion, to make this card sort of worth it. So we're definitely going to have to wait and see on how this card kind of fares in the actual format here. Moving on here, we have the Mending of Dominaria, a 5 mana enchantment saga. Chapter 1 and 2, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from among them from the graveyard to your hand. Chapter 3 here, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. 5 mana for this rare is amazing. I think this card might see some weird like ramp play in like standard, and maybe even brawl, of course. I think this card might see some real play though in Commander. I think this card is a lot of fun for that for sure. And again, the art and the Mendings, or these saga cards here, is super fun as well. Draft and Sealed, you're not really going to see this a lot because it is a rare. Moving up here, we have Multani Yavimaya's Avatar? There we go. Yavimaya's Avatar. That's what we're going to say. It's a 6 mana 0/0 legendary creature, elemental avatar with reach and trample, and it gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. You can pay to return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand, return this card from the graveyard to your hand. So this is really interesting. I like this card a ton. It's kind of a giant bomb if you have a lot of mana. And if you have 6 mana on the battlefield, this is a 6/6 reach trampler. That's very, very good. And of course, when it does die, we can just, you know, bounce 2 lands back to our hand and get this card back to our hand as well. I think that's very, very good as well in the mid to late game. This card's going to be very hard for our opponent to remove unless they have some exile stuff, or they can lock it down with some, you know, pacifism, that kind of thing. Moving on from this one, though, we have Nature's Spiral, a 2 mana sorcery. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is literally anything for 2 mana. It's a sorcery too, so it's a little slow, so it's on our turn, but it can mean that we can actually bring new life to a like giant bomb that just got removed on our side of the field. So I really do like Spirals for like a mid to low pick for us in Draft and Sealed. Sealed, and of course in Standard this will not see any play whatsoever, but Draft and Sealed, if you have a giant bomb and you need a second way to kind of get it back or replay it, Nature Spiral is going to be your card. Moving on here, we have Pierce the Sky. This is just great removal here. It's a 2-mana instant. Pierce the Sky deals 7 damage to target creature with flying. This is ideal for like sideboard tech against a deck where you want to bring in game 2. When you're playing up against a deck with a lot of flyers, Pierce the Sky is going to hopefully do enough damage to hopefully kill that creature. I do like this card a lot, especially in the sideboard. It's going to be a mid to low pick for me, since I know that it's going to be very specific in killing specific types of creatures. Moving on from here, we have Primordial Worm, a 6-mana 7/6. That's all it does. It's giant, it's massive, and it's coming at your opponent's face. It doesn't have trample, which is kind of sad, but if it does attack in, it's probably going to like kill something immediately. So if your opponent does not have any answers for this, like, you know, either immediately or the turns following that, they're just going to block it until they don't have anything else to block with, or they're just blocked with several creatures at one time. So this is going to be a great way to kind of hopefully, you know, narrow the board state on your opponent's side of the field, as well as, you know, deal some extra damage to their life total. Moving on here, we have Sapperling Migration, a 2-mana sorcery with kicker for 4. Create 2 1/1 green Sapperling creature tokens for 2 mana. That's not too bad. If this play was kicked, create 4 of those tokens instead. So for 6 mana, we get 4 1/1s. That's a little worse, in my opinion. I do think getting 2 for 2 is fine as well. So for Draft and Sealed, you know, this is a nice pick for us, a little mid to high pick if you like getting those tokens out on the battlefield for just 2 mana. I think that is fine. But of course, the kicker there, a little too expensive, but if it's in mid to late game, having 4 1/1s is not bad. Moving on here, we have Song of Freyles. This is a 2-mana enchantment saga. Chapter 1 and 2, until your next turn, creatures you control gain, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. That's really good for 2 turns. Chapter 3, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain vigilance, trample, and indestructible until end of turn. This card is ridiculous for just 2 mana. It's an uncommon, so you will see a couple of them. I think this card is really good. If you're into green, this card is going to be a fantastic home run pick for you as an uncommon. 1 and 2 is going to ramp you, and 3 is just going to make sure that you go out wide swinging. And of course, they're +1/+1 counters, so they do stay on your opponents, or they do stay on your creatures after the Song of Freyles is dead. I'm really excited to get into a very high like creature curve here, and then get Song out, and then just go ham. This card is super fun to me. Moving on here, we have Spore Spawn, or Spore Swarm. Yeah, Spore Swarm. Try and say that 3 times fast. A 4-mana instant, create 3 1/1 green Sapperling creature tokens. This is fine. It's actually cheaper than the one that got kicked earlier. It's also at instant speed, so very good for us at instant speed. Very good at being able to hopefully go a little bit wider than we need to on our opponent's instep there. I like this a lot as like a, you know, mid to low pick in Draft and Seal. Moving over, we have Spore Crowned Thalia. This is a 2-mana 2/2, so it's a you know, a bear. It's a fungus though. Each other creature you control that's a fungus or Sapperling gets +1/+1. So this is a Fungus Lord that's actually in Dominaria. So will a fungus deck or a Sapperling deck actually exist in Standard? Interesting. I like this card a lot. I think this card is a lot of fun, especially if you get into a lot of funguses and a lot of Sapperlings in Draft and Sealed. So if you get into a lot of them, this is basically, you know, your Lord here. That's great. Sadly, it does not pump itself though, but that's fine. You know, pumping other 1/1s, turning them into 2/2s or 3/3s even, is really fun as well. Moving up here, we have a Steel Leaf Champion, a 3-green, triple green, 5/4. That's ridiculous for Standard already. Steel Leaf Champion can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. That's even better. So if you open this as your rare in Draft and Sealed, congratulations, you might want to go into green. The problem though, of course, is if you're into Draft, this card is going to be kind of bad as a late pick if you can't get into green already, because the triple green here does mean it's, you know, you have to go all in on green to get this out on the battlefield. For Standard, this might actually, you know, kind of push us towards making a mono green stompy style deck in the format, and I really think that's exciting to see. Can't wait to play with this card, can't wait to deck test with this card as well. Moving up here, we have Sylvan Awakening. This is a 3-mana sorcery, rare. Until your next turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creature tokens with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. Holy Moses! This makes me want to make a mono green stompy deck. This is crazy. If you ramp really high, you go Sylvan Awakening, and you just make all of your lands attack that are also reach, indestructible, and hasty. Why reach? Why reach? I don't understand the reach part. That's a little weird to me for an attacker on our turn. Why not flying, you know? But you know, whatever. Sylvan Awakening, though, is a really fun card, and I think it will see a lot of, like, you know, deck testing and brewing around for Standard. This is also a really fun card for Commander and EDH, or Commander and, yeah, Brawl and Commander is what I'm trying to say. Brawl and Commander. Those two formats. Moving up here, we have Territorial Allosaurus. I think that's how they pronounce it. 4 mana 5/5 dinosaur. Already there is pretty decent as a rare, but it also has kicker for 3. When Territorial Allosaurus enters a battlefield, if it was kicked, it fights another target creature. So it basically can kill the creature as it enters a battlefield for just 7 mana. That's not too bad. So for draft and sealed, this is okay as a rare. For standard, this is actually going to go really nicely into a new dinosaurs list, or dinosaur tribal list, I think a lot. I think it also has enough mana here, or we also have enough mana in the actual deck list for the dinosaur tribal list to do a lot of damage as well. Moving up here for us, we have Thorn Elemental. Oh, it's a classic. It's back. 7 mana, 7/7 Elemental. You may have Thorn Elemental assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. This is a really interesting card. Basically an unblockable 7/7. Love this card a lot, and I can't wait to play with it again in draft and sealed. It's kind of a fan favorite, honestly. I think this card is really good as a draft and sealed bomb. For standard, it's not really going to see that much play, but for draft and sealed, it's going to see a ton of play. Moving up here, we have Untamed Kavu, a 2 mana 2/2 Kavu. It has kicker for 3, and it also has vigilance and trample. And if it was kicked, there's a battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it. So basically, we pay 5 mana. It comes in as a 5/5 vigilance trampler. That's super good and a very high pick for me as an uncommon in draft and in sealed. This probably won't see any kind of standard play, but it's super good regardless. I think it might see maybe some brew around stuff because it can just be a 2/2 bear trample vigilancer, or it can be a 5/5 trample vigilance, which I think is fantastic in draft and in sealed. Moving up here, we have Verdant Force, a rare for us, a 8 mana 7/7 elemental. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. Again, they're really pushing the sapperling thing for the actual standard tribal list here. This might be a thing. It's 8 mana though, so it's kind of expensive, but I do think there are enough ramp in actual standard right now that this card might actually see play. But otherwise, in draft and in sealed, if you get this on as your bomb or as your rare, you might want to go into this for sure because it can, make your board state very, very wide, as well as just be a giant bomb to play with too. Next up for us, we have Wild Onslaught. This is a 4 mana instant with kicker for 4. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. If this spell was kicked, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control instead. So for 4 mana, get a +1/+1 counter on everything, and for 9 mana, or 8 mana rather, 8 mana, I can't do math. What is math? Put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So 8 mana, 2 +1/+1. That's not too terrible. We do have something right now in Rivals of Ixalan that's for 6 mana, I believe it's 2. So it's kind of interesting. I like the 4 mana +1/+1 everywhere. That's really good for us. I think this would probably be like a mid to low pick for us as a combat trick though. It is instant speed, so we can do it on our opponent's instead, which is very interesting. So I think this is kind of okay for draft and sealed, but of course for standard, not going to see any kind of play at all. And the last card in green here, we have Yavimaya's Shepherd. I think that's what it's called, or Shafford? Shafford, maybe. So 3 mana 2/2 Fungus. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. So we have the, I think a Pioneer in Rivals of Ixalan. It's a merfolk that creates a 1/1 hexproofer. This is basically the same card here, but not a hexproof creature, just a 1/1 as well. I like this card a lot. I think this card will see a lot of play. A nice pick at a common slot for draft and sealed. So I would definitely pick into this for sure because it's a guy that makes another guy, and that's great. But that is all the cards we have for green here. Hope you liked them. What do you think of them? Of course, do you like them? Do you hate them? What kind of colors so far do you think is the strongest? Personally, I feel like red and black are the strongest. Green does have a lot of power though. I think there's a lot of power out there to be said for green. I think there's probably more stuff for green in standard than there is for draft and sealed for sure. But of course, let me know down there in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next video.